Welcome to another episode of the Neoliberal Round Podcast. This is a introduction or a preface to the Castro v. Trump series. As you know, John Anthony Castro has been contributing here on the Neoliberal Round Podcast and on a series that we have called the Castro v. Trump series. And we have done parts 1, 2, 3, and 4, and we are about to do part 5. He was supposed to sit with me today, but he's unable to do so. So what we decided to do a trailer, an introduction, or to share with you some of what we hope to discuss with Mr. Castro and to shed some more light with you. As you know, Mr. John Anthony Castro is suing Mr. Donald Trump, saying that Mr. Trump violated Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. And this is the amendment of reading from the U.S. Constitution. It says, no person shall be, this is section 3 of the 14th Amendment. It says, no person shall be a senator or representative in Congress, or elector or president and vice president, or hold any office, civil or military, under the United States or under any state, who, having previously taken an oath as a member of Congress, or as an officer of the United States, or as a member of any state legislature, or as an executive or judicial officer of any state, to support the Constitution of the United States, shall have engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same, or given aid or comfort to the enemies thereof. But Congress may, by a vote of 2/3 of each house, remove such disability. So this is Section 3 of the 14th Amendment that Mr. John Anthony Castro, who is the president of AI Tax, the president of Castro and Company, is running for president, and he is suing Mr. John Anthony Castro. And recently, when we met back in June, he relayed to us that as it relates to the ruling on the Castro v. Trump ruling, his lawsuit, Mr. Donald Trump actually had filed a motion or a brief to dismiss Mr. Castro's lawsuit on the grounds that Mr. Castro lacks standing, meaning that he is not a candidate, or the argument is that he has not established himself as a candidate. And because of that, because he doesn't have standing, then therefore the case has to be dismissed, or the court cannot make such a ruling. He cannot bring that case to the court. After several delays, Judge Aileen Cannon agreed and dismissed Mr. Castro's lawsuit, saying that he lacks standing, meaning that he's not a candidate. Now, Mr. Castro then filed an appeal in July, early part of July, to the 11th, a motion to appeal the ruling to the 11th Circuit District Court, so that they can make a direct ruling to review and determine if Mr. Castro has standing, and not only that, if he has a stated claim. Now, we're waiting on that. That's what we're supposed to, in Castro v. Trump Part 5, we're going to discuss that with Mr. Castro. What's the latest? But there are other things that we want to follow up on with Mr. Mr. Castro, because on the last podcast we did, he indicated that his appeal to the 11th District Court, if they throw it to the court, if they determine that if they agree with Judge Aileen Cannon's ruling, if they agree with it, then of course he's going to take it to the Supreme Court. That's the plan, for him to take it to the Supreme Court. If they agree with Mr. Castro's ruling, they're going to send it back down for a ruling. And if she ruled either way, then they can take it up to the Supreme Court. So, and of course, that's his plan, to take it to the Supreme Court. But according to Mr. Castro, he's saying that if he should take it to the Supreme Court or to the appellate court, then Donald Trump's lawyers could argue that, well, Mr. Castro, and this is what Mr. Castro said to me at the last discussion. Mr. Castro has filed to be a presidential candidate with the Federal Election Commission, but that his name doesn't appear on any state ballot, meaning that he's not a candidate. But according to him, he said that could be an argument. So he's not on any state ballot, but however, he has filed with the Federal Election Commission. But Mr. Castro refuted that argument by saying, sure, I'm not at the time, and I'm quite sure at this point he's on a state ballot. We're going to ask him about that, whether or not what has happened since then. Is he on? Because he did say that he was going to, he's going to be entering the race in New Hampshire. So we will ask him that question: Has he filed in any state? But according to him, though, he said you don't have to file in any state. As long as you declare that you're running for president, as long as you declare that you're running for a candidate, as a presidential candidate, then you're a presidential candidate. They cannot say that you lack standing. So, so we will hear him. We will talk with him about that. What's the latest coming out of his Castro v. Trump lawsuit, and whether or not he is now currently is he on any ballot in any state? I'm curious to find out. Another thing that we want to follow up with him on is the last discussion that we had with him. He talked about Donald Trump. He said that one of the reasons because I asked him, why do you believe that your case has not been given any traction in terms of it's not being covered by mainstream media as much? And that has changed, however. At this point, that has changed because he's been all over on Newsweek. It's very difficult for me to get a hold of him now. He's been very busy, and that's good. We're happy for him. But he said to me the last time, he said that many Democrats, and including Biden and mainstream media, they want Donald Trump to be president. They want Donald Trump to be president. But that's why many in the mainstream media have not been covering his case. However, he said that that's a bad strategy by the Democrats. That's a bad strategy, and he sounded the alarm bells. He said, listen, at this point, it seems as if, because that's a bad strategy, because Donald Trump may very well lock up the presidency. He said it's a bad strategy because they think that he's going to lose. But at this point, with what's going on in the economy and so on, Donald Trump seemed to be carrying a lot of traction, and he raised the alarm bells about that. That's a bad strategy. And he said that at this point, the only way Donald Trump's ability to run, or his candidacy, or his path to 2024 will be upended or derailed is unless his case goes straight to the Supreme Court. That's the only way at this point. In fact, Mr. Trump has several cases right now, and there's nothing slowing down his path to the presidency. So that's what's quite interesting that he would say that. It's curious to find out what has changed now, because there's been so much curiosity surrounding his lawsuit and his efforts, and he has several strategies and several ways of doing so. So I'm curious. So we will follow up with him about that. We also want to ask him about by the way, part of his appeal to the Supreme Court, or his plan is he will either, if the appeal court's route doesn't work, he'll take it to the Supreme Court. But part of his appeal is that Judge Aileen Cannon be recused from all of Donald Trump's case. We want to find out what has happened with that. Was he successful in recusing Judge Aileen Cannon from all of Donald Trump's case? We want to get some questions from him as it relates to that. he said that by October 15 he was going to issue. He said that we're going by the last days of probably the last day of September, we would have gotten a ruling on from the 11th Circuit District Court as it relates to his appeal concerning the ruling to dismiss by Judge Aileen Cannon. Okay, so and then he said that by October 15 he would issue a writ of certiorari and or go to the Supreme Court regarding the appeal to remove regarding the removal of Judge Aileen Cannon from all of Trump's cases. We want to get an update on that. Finally, well, not finally, but there's another. He tweeted recently that magistrate Judge Alison Clare is abusing her position and protecting Donald Trump from accountability for January 6th. I've never heard that name before. Who is Magistrate Judge Alison Clare? Okay, does that mean that Judge Aileen Cannon is no longer on the lawsuit on the case? Who is this Judge Alison Clare? What does that have to do with his lawsuit and so on and so forth? We will get into that. But it's quite interesting that he is seeking to remove Judge Aileen Cannon from presiding over or overseeing all of Donald Trump's case, while at the same time we have another judge who is also being accused of abusing her position and protecting Donald Trump. So it's as if you get rid of one, there's another. But we want to find out who is this, and we want to know what's happening in New Hampshire from Mr. Castro. What's happening in New Hampshire? Because he said that in a recent tweet on October 20th, which is about 2 days ago, he said today in the U.S. District Court in New Hampshire, lawyers for Trump, and he says at Donald Trump, and lawyers for at New Hampshire State Secretary, and at New Hampshire GOP faced off with me in a jurisdictional hearing and got schooled. They got schooled, and he said that the judge will rule in 14 days. What is this jurisdictional hearing about? Does it have to do with the lawsuit, the Castro v. Trump, or is it something new? We'll find out. But of course, it's still Castro v. Trump because it has to do with Trump. But is this another strategy, another part of his arsenal in upending and derailing Mr. Trump's candidacy? But I'm curious to find out. The next question we want to ask him is: recently, he said that Democratic senators introduced a bill establishing Supreme Court term limits. And he said, I want this, but it's unconstitutional. I want it, but it is unconstitutional. Whatever the Democrats are doing is they're introducing a bill that is unconstitutional. That's a waste of taxpayers' money anyways. That's a waste of time. That makes no sense. Why are you introducing a bill that is unconstitutional? You need to first approach it from the level of the Supreme Court or the constitutional level. Okay, not from the legislature level. So I'm not understanding. But I mean, he's saying that but however, many people seem to be for this. He said, according to Mr. Castro, I want it, but it is unconstitutional. Why? He said the Constitution allows for a lifetime appointment. But however, there is a caveat. Okay, lifetime appointment, but you must have good behavior. If there's anything that questions your ethics and your morality, then your lifetime appointment can be affected. But of course, with what's happening in our society today, it's easy to get around that. It's easy to get around that. The issue of ethics and the issue of morality and the issue of what is good behavior? What is good behavior? Say, for example, he is suing Mr. Trump for violating Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. But that's a caveat that was created to manage, to monitor, and to prevent abuse of power. But people are going around that. The same thing. So of course, this caveat of, what it's saying, somebody responded to his tweet, Vince Cataro, saying we should definitely add that amendment. This lifetime appointment, we should add, term limits. We should add term limits. I agree with that. Okay, we should add term limits because lifetime appointment only facilitate privilege, power, abuse of power. We create an opening. Life is what you make it, and you create something knowing human nature that allows for long-term appointments. that makes any sense. And you see what's going on in society today. So therefore, Vince Gattaro, I agree with you. So I want to ask him about that. I want to ask him, well, he did respond. He said, he responded to Vince saying that adding constitutional amendments are insanely difficult to accomplish. So my question to Mr. Castro is, why are they so? And what possible solutions do you recommend? What do you recommend as a constitutional legal scholar, as someone who's running for president and is versed in law? How would you suggest, what would you recommend to go around the difficulty? Or what would you recommend to the Democrats? Because they're introducing a bill. So what would you recommend? And of course, we want to ask him about what's going on in the Middle East. Because the last podcast we had, he talked about the issue of the domestic supply of energy. Once we have control and use the technology to improve our domestic supply of energy without the dependence of foreign energy, or then the strategic positioning that we try to create in the US, a policy that we have, that strategic positioning that we have, that's why we are all over the world. We're all over the world. But once we are able to develop some kind of mastery and develop our domestic supply of energy without depending on international supply, then we don't need to be all over the world, the Middle East, so on and so forth. But I want to talk to him about that and Joe Biden's recent request of $1.2 billion to support Ukraine and also to support Israel, because according to him, our partnership and our position in the world requires us to spend all this money. But then, so I want to ask him, how does he feel about that? And does this have to do with the issue of the domestic supply of energy? And I really want to get into this Palestine-Hamas issue and what's going on in the Palestine issue, because I want to talk with him as an attorney and someone who aspired to be president. In 1944, the powerful countries came together and to reorder the world, and of course to create a strategic position in the Middle East. And by 1947, we had Israel, which has helped to create terrorists. So I want to have a discussion with him about that. How do you feel about that? How are we gonna? Because the issue is an issue of land and property. As long as Israel is there, we will always have this war. How would he fix the problem as a president? What is his recommendation to Mr. Biden and to the United Nations? And finally, he said that part of his plan is to develop a rainbow coalition starting in New Hampshire. And recently I saw some tweet. He's posted up a tweet saying, if you are in New Hampshire, text me. And if you are in Arizona, DM me. If you're okay, what's going on? I want to know what's happening in New Hampshire and what's happening in Arizona that he's asking people to text and DM him there. And what's going on with this? Give us a follow-up on this rainbow coalition. What's happening with this rainbow coalition starting in New Hampshire? Where is he on that? So those are some of the questions we are going to be asking him, and we're going to be delving in, and we're going to ask him what's going on with his campaign, where he is so far. So we will definitely be following up with him. Stay tuned to the podcast. Subscribe. This is the Neoliberal Round Podcast. Please support us. Anchor.fm/the-neoliberal/support. We are on YouTube, SoundCloud, Amazon, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, The Audible, Radio Public, Podvine, P-Adverb. There is nowhere where we are not. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. Please follow us, subscribe, share the show with your friends. And again, we welcome your donations so that we can continue to improve the show and develop our research and to continue to promote and to develop our programming. So subscribe and stay tuned. Coming up this week, and I'm so sorry that we couldn't have John Castro today, but he probably will be with us tomorrow or Wednesday, and we will carry the show at the 2 o'clock hour between 2 and 5 on Thursday or Friday. So, but continue to stay tuned to us. This is the Neoliberal Round, brought to you by the Neoliberal Corporation. We are always serving the world today to solve tomorrow's challenges by making popular what was the monopoly. Visit us at theneoliberal.com and renaldocmckenzie.com. And don't forget to get a copy of my book, which is available in the Audible, ebook, paperback, and hardcover, Neoliberalism, Globalization, Income Inequality, Poverty, and Resistance. And don't forget my upcoming book, Neoliberal Globalization Reconsidered, Neo-Capitalism and the Death of Nations. And if you'd like to participate and come on the show, please reach out to us at info@theneoliberal.com. Or please follow us on Twitter, Renaldo McKenzie, or the Neoliberal Co. Walk good.